So I welcome Erik Schwartz to our series, co-founder and chief AI officer at Elysia.ai Labs.
I love that balance of working with computers, working with technology, but also delivering practical, pragmatic solutions. The one marketable skill that I had was the ability to take a paperclip to a Macintosh and be able to pop out that floppy disk. We built one of the largest search engine platforms that powered their entire video experience. We got one of the first products built on top of ChatGPT out to market, which was Scopus AI. The purpose for Scopus AI was to help academics and help professors and help those that work in the academic institutes and academic professions, linking the different pieces of content, the references to each other, all that, right? The references and the citations, all that was the inspiration for the World Wide Web and the linking of content that we have today. We have the ability to now move very quickly. We can help authors take their content and put it into an AI and make someone talk to it. We can help people interact with legacy media like textbooks and print media. We have all new ways of interacting with this content. You're only limited by your imagination. 9 times out of 10, you find someone that doesn't have the answers at their fingertips. It takes too long. And so AI is an incredible tool for pulling that information and driving the quality of the overall response higher than even humans can do. The beautiful thing about these AI systems, and they're getting smarter and smarter over time, and I think we're really kind of hitting that paradigm shift where I sit down with an AI and I have to ask it a question and it gives me a response back. Over time, these AI systems are going to become more proactive themselves. They'll be able to predict things for us. They'll be able to help us. They'll be able to identify.
Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast show. Once again, powered by businessabc.net, citiesabc.com, and wisdomia.ai. We keep navigating the waves of everything happening around the world we live. And it's a fantastic world, but as well, I would say, a very turbulent, full of waves world. And I want to start with a quote that I recently passed to my team that I think it's important to contextualize my special guest today. That is someone that I think can help us navigate this world we're going through. So be brutal, honest about the short term, and optimistic and confident about the long term. This is a quote by Reed Hastings, business and co-CEO of Netflix. So I think we're going definitely about short, medium, long term, and we are in the middle of the AI revolution. And we need people that actually can look at this AI revolution, have maturity, and look it in the eyes and look with having strong capacities. So I welcome Erik Schwartz to our series. And Erik is someone I know for some time, and I've been quite fascinated by his resilience and as well by his persistence of building communities, and as well an energy to make enthusiasm about putting people together, and as well his knowledge about business and technology. So Erik is a technologist and serial entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in the tech sector, specialising in AI, information search and retrieval, and knowledge discovery. He is the co-founder and chief AI officer at Elysia.ai Labs, Elysia.ai, integrating large language models, LLMs, and generative AI into search technologies, and offering automation, intelligent AI assistance, and multimodal AI. And this integrated with the experience that can help business unlock AI's full potential to achieve real operational outcomes. Some of the work previously that Erik did with multiple global corporations include build a billion-scale video intelligence platform at Comcast, powering 1 billion daily interactions. He led a semantic search and AI transformative at Elsevier, accelerating global research, and he shaped enterprise search at Microsoft, enabling smart discovery in core products. He designed as well and launched Scopus AI, refining and redefining how academia finds knowledge, and scale AI consulting at Tricon, unlocking measurable wins with intelligent workflows. So Erik is as well a dynamic super networker, I would say super um, glue of people, and in I would say ambassador as well. That is a member and as well leading a couple of multiple AI accelerators and networks like the AI Accelerator Institute, where it connects and empowers passionate AI infrastructure innovators and serial entrepreneurs. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineer from Trinity College, Hertford. So, Erik, you have a fantastic overview and CV. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to our series.
Dinis, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's a pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to hear that back and hear the summary of your career in just a few minutes and all the things and all the lives that you've touched along the way.
Yeah, and I try to be synthetic. I could go for a long time because you work at some of the biggest corporations in the world and some of the projects, of course, reaching billions of people. So I want to start first with, I think, your background, your inspirations, and I would say the journey and the people that shape who you are today, especially probably the people and the journey.
Yeah, it's always interesting, and I always look at, especially having gone through my career and started out in technology and then ended up building products and working with product teams. I've always commented on the paths that people take and the journeys, especially when you get into the field of product management, as there's no discrete path into that space. But my journey started early in the early 90s. I was at university. I was studying, as you mentioned, electrical engineering. I love that balance of working with computers, working with technology, but also delivering practical, pragmatic solutions. And so that's why I got gravitated towards engineering. And really, for spending money and for spare cash while I was at university, I worked at the computer center. And so I came out with a bachelor's degree in the early 90s. And the one marketable skill that I had was the ability to take a paperclip to a Macintosh and be able to pop out that floppy disk, right? So that people could get their theses out of the printer systems and be able to swap a ream of paper from the laser printers in the early 90s. Those are the big skills that I came out of university with, along with your ability to think and learn along the way. So I took a role immediately, but what had happened in that year is the year, if you remember, that the web first showed up. So the National Supercomputer Association in Urbana-Champaign, the NCSA Mosaic came out with the first web browser, and didn't know what the web was at that time, didn't know what it was going to do, but the beautiful simplicity of being able to take a very simple language and be able to share information with anyone around the world was dramatically was incredibly empowering for me. And so I got a role right after university as a webmaster, started building digital libraries, and this is where I fell into the space of helping people with intents, with questions in their mind, connect with the content that has answers to their questions. This is the fundamental nexus that I've spent my entirety of my career in. So started working for search engine vendors on the technology side, ended up in the 2000s, as you mentioned, at Microsoft. And this through a series of acquisitions that happened in the late 2000s. And as you go along and go back and you think about those interactions, it's always the people that you meet along the way that are the most important thing. You think about a role that you take in an organization, you think about the advice that you've given to somebody who was struggling in their career or wanted to solve a problem. And the things that you say and the words that you shared with them and the advice that you gave still continue to resonate years later. People would reach back to me and say, Erik, when you told me back, to do it this way or approach a problem that way, I still remember that to this day. And so I've always had this natural ability to gravitate towards people, to help them through their problems and help them find solutions for the things that they're trying to do. So that brings me through to Microsoft. I ended up at a few years at Comcast. After a few years of Microsoft, that I was on the East Coast, and Microsoft wanted all of their product folks in the West Coast and out in Redmond. And my family was young, so we weren't able to relocate at the time. And so I then pivoted and took a role with Comcast. And by that time, I had fully gotten into a product role. and building products. And at Comcast, we built one of the largest search engine platforms that powered their entire video experience. And it was a system that handled over 1 billion requests a day. Every time a person or a customer at Comcast picked up the remote control and interfaced with their TV, they hit our search engine. So it was a big discovery platform that allowed users to find the content that they wanted to watch on TV that was both available and ready for them that they had access to play. That brought me finally to London in 2018, where I ended up at Elsevier taking on a similar role, building a knowledge discovery platform for them, where we built a search engine and recommendation system that powered their government customer-facing applications, number of SaaS applications, which then brings us all the way up to the current date, up to the launch of November of 2022 when ChatGPT showed up. And there was a big scramble around the world. If you remember when that ChatGPT first arrived on people's platforms and people's desktops, and lots of companies were saying, "What are we going to do with this technology? This is unlike anything we've ever seen." And for me, it was a natural extension of where I'd spent the entirety of my career. So I've been spending my career understanding people's intents, their language, their questions, the problems that they want to solve, connecting it back to the content that answers their questions. And ChatGPT suddenly enabled all of these tools that we've been struggling with for decades to be able to solve those same problems. And so within a few months, we coordinated the team, and we got one of the first products built on top of ChatGPT out to market, which was Scopus AI. So this was a trusted database of over 90 million articles, all scientific academic articles. Scopus is a trusted data source that's used by the academic community for assessing themselves and assessing their careers. Researchers, professors, anyone in the academic career goes into Scopus to find where their articles are being posted, who's referenced their articles, to generate their H-index, to generate their score, which gives them an attribute of the value of their career and the value of the work that they've done, and the impact of that work. And for us to take an AI layer, which people were concerned, it was fraught with risks, it was fraught with costs, it was fraught with the ability can we trust it and put it on top of this highly trusted data set was an incredible journey. And so we built that, we launched that, and we drove a dramatic impact to this product that was a stagnant product in terms of growth, but saw growth, double-digit growth for the first time in decades. It was an exciting journey.
So let's go a step before. So it's amazing achievements and a lot of technical complexity, big teams and big corporations. But before that, my question is, if I would ask you, just go back a couple of decades when you start your career, would you be doing what you're doing now, and were the people that influenced it more for you?
So it's a great question. Would I fallen into the same path? For me, it was always about I had a love of being able to do things with a computer. I had the love of being able to create something with my hands, be able to generate something with my hands and put it together and have it become a product or a service or a tool that you could use. And I think that's what pulled me into the web in the first internet 1.0 back in the 90s. If we had the tools that we had today, so the ability to vibe code that we do with Cursor or tools like Lovable, where I could sit down with a few words and build an entire experience, I think I would have absolutely ended up in the same place, but I would have gotten there in a slightly different path, I think. I may not have gone down the whole information retrieval path. I might have gone straight into working directly with AI. People that influence me, the things that I remember at the time, I was really excited by the whole ecosystem that Sun Microsystems was creating in the early part of the career. They had machines, they had computers, they were building interconnected systems. They had released Java at the time, which was a programming language, the Java programming language that everyone knows and thinks about, which solved one of the first problems that we had on the computers, which was about how do we write code in one place and have it run in lots of places without having to recompile it. I mean, back in the day back at that time, in that time in the 90s, when you wrote code, we spent time and hours and multiple hours getting your program to run on different computer systems because the operating systems, the hardware, all the different layers are different. And so I think that was a big influence on me, is the ability to kind of be able to write something and develop it and deploy it and put it out there. And now that's taken automatically. So leaders that influenced me, I think at the time, leaders like Bill Gates, like Larry Ellison, like that crew of people, Steve Jobs, the way they were able to quickly and succinctly define a product, create a vision, and pull their teams along to those visions. Those are the people that I was inspired by the most, and I wanted to draw my love for computers.
Okay, so this is great, and I still want to go one step back before I go forward. So from before these global leaders in the education, so on the education side, because I know that you're very focused as well in education, or in your family, was I know that you have especially a big deal of respect for your father. Give us a bit of background, because what I want to dismantle, and that's what I love to do in this series, is what makes a successful career and the ups and downs of any career, because in the end of the day, failure and success come alike. Is it's been more personal drive, family drive, a mix of both, education, and I want to go to this inception of your career, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dennis. Thank you for taking us back there. So going back, um, my parents were separated very early when I was little. So I spent weekends with my father, and weekdays with my mother. My mother was a teacher. My mother's husband was a teacher. We spent time. We actually lived on the property of the school ground in the 70s. So we had this beautiful, pristine 9-acre property that we lived on, which was the school that my parents taught at, and I lived there. And so I had this lovely balance of being immersed in academia, in that my parents were both teachers. We lived on a school. We spent all of our time involved with school and education. There were animals on this farm. There was a big property. There was a field, and I lived. This was my life. This was my backyard. Was this school? But at the same time, my father was a serial entrepreneur. He was a businessman. He used to say, Eric, nothing ever happens until somebody sells something. Okay. And he went through his entire career looking for one thing after another to sell. And it took him the entirety of his career to figure out what worked for him. He started, he came out of school with traditional education. He served in the army. He was in World War II, back in the late 40s. He was about to be deployed, and the war ended. So this gives you a sense of when he was coming out. In fact, he got a scholarship after school to go to university. He went to Hobart University and came out as a junior executive. He didn't know what that was, but he was like, I'm ready. I'm going to go face the world. I'm a junior executive. And that's what the training that he got. But it turns out that it never taught him what his actual skills were. The skills that he had is he had the ability to find out what people needed and help them deliver that. So he started selling postage meters for Pitney Bowes. Pitney Bowes, if we remember, was one of the largest companies that sold pre-metered postage meters, and for direct mail. So before we had email, before we had the web, before we had instant messaging, before we had social media, messages went out. Companies would spend lots and lots of money to print out paper, stuff them into envelopes, put postage on them, and sell them to everyone's homes. They would buy these lists of addresses and sell them and deliver them, and people would put their information, flyers, into these envelopes, and you'd sell it at a bulk rate. And these Pitney Bowes machines would go and process and put the postage stamp on there for these bulk mail opportunities. And these were thousands and thousands and thousands of letters that people would generate at a cost. Not only was there a cost for printing and a cost for paper and a cost for the postage, these things would cost 10, 15, 20 cents each, which is, when you add up and you do thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of letters, it's a really costly campaign. Anyway, that's where he started his career, selling, and he found out as a junior executive, he found out that he had a real knack for finding out what people wanted and giving it to them. And so he pivoted his career over time, and he got involved and fell in love with images and posters, pictures of people of celebrities. And he found out that it wasn't his passion necessarily, but he found out that people were willing to pay for it. So he created his own business. He ran it out of his building in New York City. He lived in Chelsea, in Greenwich Village, just above Greenwich Village in New York City, and he ran his entire business out of this building. And he would go around the city, go around Manhattan, and go to various art studios, buying artwork, collecting the images of these movie stars and rock stars and celebrities, and reformatting them and delivering them as photographs and posters throughout the world. And that's where he drove his business and how he got his independence. And so I had this lovely balance of, on one side, I had strict educators, and my parents were deep into philosophy and Eastern religions and meditation on one side. On the other side, I had just a very pragmatic businessman who found out and understood what people wanted and and made that for them, and was able to make an incredible living, send me to school, send me off, and set me up for my retirement based on this love and passion that he had found.
So you have a fantastic background, and it's very special as well, relationship both with your father and as well a focus on education. And I explained this as well, your passion for putting people together and educate. So fast forward to your achievements, and I want to touch, of course, you mentioned in your introduction the work you did to building a billion scale video intelligence platform at Comcast, and as well leading AI transformation at Elsevier and Microsoft. So let's start first by one of the things that I think for people listening to us, and I always like to have a perspective of time, is that, for instance, if you go just to the 50s, at the time of your father, there were actually almost no conventional jobs. You would do sales, so you work for the government, or if you would be a woman, you would not have a job because most of the jobs were men. You would be at home. So that means most of the jobs that we had in the last 50 years started in the 60s. And this was mostly in the US and Western world, because if you go to the rest of Europe, most of them were not as advanced as we have now. And of course, the US has been much more advanced, and even the UK, than most of the world. So we are right now going through another kind of industrial revolution part that is part of the AI. And as well, your career has been quite interesting because you were in the beginning of the video streaming, and you're in the beginning of technology, and now you are in the beginning of AI. So, and as well, you have big positions, but in different parts. If in the case of Comcast, was building a video intelligence platform. I want to touch that as a case study, how technology is changing so fast and affecting us so much, but sometimes becomes invisible because we don't understand what is behind the scenes, and we just see or the panic or the challenges.
Yeah, yeah. I think working at both Microsoft and Comcast gave me a view about what it really truly takes to build enterprise scale software. I mean, we had teams of thousands of people working on these solutions. The problem that we had at Comcast was interesting. And so if you think about the business that Comcast runs, they connect, their fundamental business is to connect wires to people's homes and deliver information services through those wires. Right. So they manage, first and foremost, they manage the third largest IP network in the world. It's the third largest IP network after the US Department of Defense and the entire country of China. The next biggest one is Comcast. And so you think about all those endpoints and all those wires connecting from place to place to place to place to place. That's millions and millions and millions of connections. On top of that, they were starting to deliver services. They were delivering internet services, and they were delivering video services. And then eventually they moved it into home services. So home security and home monitoring. Sort of this is at the dawn of the IoT. But when I joined Comcast, they had effectively taken 4 replicas of the exact same data set. So this is a data set that they licensed. In fact, they licensed it from the exact same vendor. So there's a vendor called Rovi who had the data set of all of the people, all of the actors, all of the TV shows, all of the series, all the episodes, every bit of information you need to put together and put a screen together and put a guide together on the television set. And they brought it into 4 discrete places inside the organization. One was in our team that was working on a search engine. Another was the mobile and web team. Another was the video team. And the fourth one was a next generation platform that they were building, which ended up being a product called X1. and it was their next generation platform. I think what was so the first few years of my career was about data migration. How do we take a massive organization, literally a battleship that's at sea, running and serving millions and millions and millions of customers across these four different channels, and how do we consolidate that into a single data source so that we can drive consistency across the application in affordances? One of the biggest problems we got from customers is I go to my TV, I see this program available. I go on my mobile device, I see this program available, and they're not the same. Why are they different? Right? Why is it different? And so it turns out you take the same data and you run it through different processes, right? And you put it to different repositories and build different application stacks on it. The data to the experience of the end user becomes different. So this taught me fundamentally that the power of data, right? And this doesn't sound like complicated data, right? It's all the actors in a TV show, it's the name of the episode, the time that it's on. However, when you look at the complexity of the number of people, the number of markets just in the United States, the number of television stations that are delivering the same content through their affiliates, the ways you can watch it either live or on demand, you start to have a massive problem that you can understand very easily why if we don't follow the same exact rules for putting this data together, it's going to be a different experience. And I'm telling the story primarily because it leads to fast forward to today when we run into AI and we say, let's just throw our data into AI. And we wonder why the systems don't work, this garbage in, garbage out problem. If you don't take the care and create the hygiene around organizing your data and thinking about the layers of access and the applications that you build on top of it, you're going to have a fragmented customer experience. So that was the first problem that we solved, was how do we bring all this data together so that all the systems, regardless of the customer channel, have the exact same experience. The second part, which was we went through a number of things, a number of different ways, lots of different ways to solve this problem. But the way that we chose to solve this problem, to bring it together in a single experience for all these different platforms and products that are using it, is we decided to put it together under a search engine. So we use search technology to become the API, if you will, of the underlying data. Data would come in, it would get managed, it would get disseminated into various places inside of a core data structure. We'd then run it into a search engine, and the search engine would then be the API that would give the data out in real time to the various products and clients. This turns out to be a very scalable and highly successful model. As we mentioned in the introduction, we were able to scale that solution up to support over 1 billion requests a day. So this is people looking for their TV shows, looking to change the channel, looking for a movie to watch, looking to set up a recording for something coming in the future. All the different elements and different use cases, all supported by this robust search engine. What was unique about it, though, is that it also allowed us, because it was so flexible, it also allowed us to take that content. And if you know anything about search engines, right, you go into a search engine, you say, give me a request. So I could go into a search engine and say, give me the top action movies, right, that are available to watch. Well, because it's a list of movies, so let's say I get 50 movies back, and here's the top action movies. Maybe it's the most popular action movies that are on the platform right now, or maybe it's the newest action movies, because people always want to watch something new. Now that you have this information that's organized this way, I can now take that information and I can look at your own personal history and your own consumption patterns, and I can reorder that for you. So I can personalize that experience because it's a flexible list, right? And so this gets us to a point where we've built a flexible infrastructure for delivering the data. And then on top of that, we can also build highly personalized solutions that meet exactly what you want at the time you want to watch it.
And this is amazing amount of work. So let's cut this in pieces and go where we are now. So from all this work that you did with two of the biggest organizations in the world, of course, it brought you a huge amount of technical capacities that are unique worldwide, because you combine video, data, search, semantics, and AI. And of course, this is the epicenter of where you are now. So this brought you right now to create your own path as an entrepreneur. And as well, you are right now, of course, building Elysia.ai Labs. So from this big work in these big corporations, a bit of context in terms of the career, and I think whatever you want to talk about your career and where you stand now.
So large companies have two sides to them, right? A large organization, a large corporation like a Microsoft, like a Comcast, like an Elsevier, create these wonderful opportunities for the staff and the employees. They have such a large number of customers that it's really easy to be able to deploy something out to the marketplace and have a massive impact. You can put something out there and people are talking about it. That was one of the things that was most wonderful about working for a place like Comcast is that we could put a feature out. We could change. We worked heavily at the time on the voice remote, which was a remote control that you could talk into and say, I want to watch Game of Thrones, right? That was the show that was popular at the time. Or I want to watch American Idol, right? Were the shows that people were watching at the time we came out with the voice remote. But you're able to now create this device that's so simple for people to use to pick up their remote control that they have in their hands and talk to it and get exactly what they want out of it. So there's this massive ability to drive incredible impact and incredible scale and get rewarded for it. We won an Emmy. The team won an Emmy for this voice remote. Going to Las Vegas to receive an Emmy and holding an Emmy in our hands because we had such an impact on the industry is an incredibly experience. On the flip side, right? We used to spend 3 days a quarter doing quarterly planning. We would spend 3 days in the organization trying to get down to a place where we say, okay, what are the 2 or 3 things that we're going to do over the next 3 months? We literally spent 3 days of our time, going through the projects of 50 or 100 or dozens of projects that are going out there and say, what exactly are we going to deliver? And these things, they just took their time. They're all the dependencies that we created, all the layers. It was slow, and there was lots of stakeholders had to be taken along the way. People had different opinions about how and different inputs in terms of how this content should be delivered and how they're going to make money on it, how they're going to manage the information that comes through, and so to manage these stakeholders and to get this out just took an incredible amount of time. And so you've got this dichotomy where you've got this ability to drive impact, but sometimes you feel like you're moving at such a slow pace. And so for me, that got to be a frustrating experience. I wanted to be in a place where I could always create new experiences and always just be moving quickly and always move at the pace that the internet wants to move at. Furthermore, when you create these dependencies inside these large organizations, it's very slow to change. Even if we need to do a software update or we need to review something to a revision, a software package to the latest version, maybe to address a bug or to take on a new feature, these things would take weeks and weeks and weeks to weeks. And new features, new ideas were very slow to emerge to the marketplace. So if we pivot that now away from these corporate, which have these massive scale, and we pivot over to where we are right now, solving problems for customers with Elysia.ai Labs, we have the ability to now move very quickly. We can help authors take their content and put it into an AI and make someone talk to it. We can help people interact with legacy media like textbooks and print media and ask questions of it. We can now create images on the fly. We can create videos on the fly. We can create songs on the fly. We have all new ways of interacting with this content. It's you're only limited by your imagination now, not this legacy that's holding you back from where you were. And so I think that's what's exciting is that we have now so many new affordances for being able to deliver this content, to be able to engage with users. And it's those sort of opportunities that make us the most excited.
So picking in what you just said, and I think it's especially all the complexity and possibilities that we have right now. So we are in a fantastic, I think I would say, unique moment in history, because in one hand we are discussing all the revolutionary parts that actually start with the work of people like you working for big corporations, especially integrating semantic search that became generative search or generative artificial intelligence models. And they've been revolutionizing the knowledge discovery and how the search technologies integrate with the rise of large language models and generative AI in particular. So you are right now in a building your own ecosystem, your own company, and you've been as well working with a lot of business leaders, both within these organizations and now outside. So, how do you see the opportunities and the challenge when it comes to the way AI is coming at a velocity that is much bigger, but as well its impact in the present? And I know that you've been researching and reflecting about the what is the work, what is the future of work, what is the present of the work.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a great question, and you know, looking through my career and looking back over the years, we talked about the various places that I've been and my parents, my father, and things like that. But we've been through a number of technology evolutions. So in the 80s, we saw the dawn of the PC, the desktop computer. These went from big machines in data centers or in closets that you had maybe had a terminal access to a personal computer on everyone's desktop. In the 90s, we started to see the web appear, as we talked about, which connected these computers and computer systems in lots of different ways. And then in the 2000s, we saw the rise of mobile. The smartphone came around, and in the tens, we saw cloud and cloud adoption. So we've seen these natural technology evolutions over the past decades, and each one is incremental and builds on top of the other one. And it's easy to come back and look at AI and say, oh, AI is just the next evolution, right? We've now gotten this data. We've now gotten the compute power, all the number of there's large data centers, the cloud. We've now got the mobile power to be able to bring something to our phones. We've got these desktop computers. We've got these wireless machines everywhere. We've got Wi-Fi. AI is just the next evolution of these technical powers. But there's something more, right? There's something more that AI is bringing to the table because suddenly I'm now able to not only am I able to build solutions and solve problems, but I literally have the knowledge and intelligence of the world at my fingertips. And all I have to do is ask the right questions. To unlock that intelligence, to unlock that information, I just have to know what questions to ask. So here's where we run into the fundamental problem with AI. First and foremost, you see a lot of businesses saying, "Listen, we've gone through a number of technology changes over the past decade. We've gone from PC to, as you said, PC to web to mobile to cloud. We've done all those. We get that, and some have incremental benefits. Sometimes it's better for us to wait for these things to mature until we adopt them." And so they're coming up with all kinds of objections for reasons not to adopt the technology. But what's happening is that because we're moving at such a pace right now, because we're moving at such a fast rate, is if you wait a year or you wait 2 years to start to adopt this technology, it's already moving, it's making generational leaps every 6 to 12 months. So that means that you're going to have more and more to catch up with. And so what I tell, the biggest barriers that we see for organizations right now is again, coming back to the objections, right? It's risky. Right? We can't trust it. It's not consistent. It's too expensive. We don't know how much it's going to cost. We can't control the costs. We don't know where it fits into side of our business. We can finally get our data organized, right? So then what about the bias? What about the underlying trust of these systems? So all these questions come up, and I think if you play those stories forward, we can ask those questions about any technological advancement. But the reality is that I now have the ability, as an individual, to compete with a team of 10. I can now sit down, I can take a tender, a public tender, or find an opportunity. I can respond to the opportunity. I can interact and role play with the AI. Different ways of solving that problem. I can run through architectures in my head. I can look at different ways that we can deploy this. We can find different solutions for those companies. We can even look at different ways of pricing these solutions, and we can present that to the user in terms of a formal proposal. I can also take that as well, and I can put that into another tool, and I can make a visual PowerPoint. That's a pitch deck that goes along with that. And yet I can make another tool. And I can take that same proposal and I can make it into a podcast, right? So that the consumer, the customer, now in their head can see, I've got a written proposal, I've got a deck, I've got an audio companion that goes with it. That would have taken weeks and weeks and weeks and months to accomplish with our traditional mechanisms. So this is just one example of how I can use it. But it really creates the superpower for us to be able to adapt and fit and get our information and change our information, the information we want to relay to people, and deliver it in the ways that they're going to consume it the best.
You mentioned a lot of very important things, and of course, very positive ones. I think that on the positive side, I think we all highlight that. So let's look at the flip side of that, and I think you partly open a bit of Pandora box. So um, at the same time, we're going through. I would say there's a psychological perception of how these innovations, and especially AI, is bringing all these capacities and all these amazing um, superpowers that you just highlighted. But at the same time, this is creating a bit of a chaos. I would say this is the AI chaos. The AI chaos is that at the moment we become all entrepreneurs or solo entrepreneurs, and at the same time we are all struggling to kind of decipher this world that we are building together. But at the same time, we have these big corporations that at the same time have these billions and trillions of dollars, and the rest of the economy is struggling with meets the end. And at the same time, being very realistic, most of the young people that are studying right now will have to become solo entrepreneurs as well and build different models that even me and you had different opportunities. Although me and you, I think we're not complete examples here. So I would like to touch, because one of the work you're doing, especially at your present venture, and as well a lot of work you do in terms of networking and putting together these ecosystems, is guiding people. So I would like to, so I'll just read a couple of notes that I have here. So the point is that is every person for themselves, because of course we cannot have 8 billion people being sole entrepreneurs. Are we going to be able to bring these technologies to empower society when we have, and I don't want to go in the negative, but I want to look at facts. So the facts right now is that although there's a lot of new jobs being created, these jobs are fragmented jobs. So that means a young person, even people in our age, have to continue reinventing themselves. So this implies an entire capacity of reinventing ourselves. And of course, if you look at science fiction, what we have in Star Wars, where society killed especially if it is a Star Trek, that the society created a society that still works, still has their functions, and they still have their competition, but is based on a society that provides the basics. So we don't have that society. That's a fact. I think you and me are quite lucky because we are both in Europe and in the UK, which is a very, I would say, stable country, and there's all these different things. And as well, we know how to use these tools. But I want to provoke in a good way, because the challenge I find speaking with young entrepreneurs, even people on this channel, is that there's the big, really global experts like you that understand this and are acting on it. But even us, we struggle to understand, to digest this technology, because what worked last month in the prompt engineer doesn't work this month. And this implies getting out, of course, we're no longer young people, but we still have a fantastic capacity, intellectual and creative, but implies creativity, adaptation, change management, and this is fantastic resilience. And of course, we have as well a huge problem. I had a former personality that I interviewed that mentioned as well, this creates a huge mental health instability, because you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow or even today. So I know that I'm going the rabbit hole of a bit more of the challenge than actually the opportunities, but I would like to highlight this without going the boom kind of doom scenario, but in the reality is this is difficult. And I'm sure that the question directly that I would ask is, the people that you are finding in the events where you speak, in the events that you gather together. So question one, are they prepared? And question two, how are they going to be going this tsunami? Because this is a chaos tsunami that comes with AI. Whatever we look at it in the most constructive, idealistic, utopian scenario, or the most doom scenario.
Yeah. So you raise a number of really interesting issues, and we talk about these sort of these large corporations, and if you think about it, right, the construct of a large corporation, right? How a corporation is organized to pull together single people under a single entity to go after a problem, to go after a business, to own a segment of a market, to build big products. I mean, this goes back to how we used to organize ourselves back in the Industrial Revolution. Everyone would come into a factory and work to produce a widget, and that was the basic model, right? A lot of our models for how we build businesses and run businesses today are based on that fundamental model of everyone comes into a room, we work on the same product, and we deliver the same thing as an entity, right? That's we come into an office, the office, the workplace, the job, the 9 to 5, right? All that's based on paradigms from decades ago. And so one of the big opportunities, and so yes, it's going to create, yes, it's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for people to become entirely fragmented, and I think that's problematic, as you say. However, there's another opportunity that I think we can shine a light on, which says, listen, now as individuals, right, I can bring my strengths to any project. You and I, Dinis, we can get together, right? We can collaborate on an event, we can collaborate on a product, we can collaborate on a platform, but we can do that as loosely connected entities. We both get a benefit of it, right? We both get ways to maintain our livelihood. We both get ways to have an impact on the world. We both have ways to build things that we love, to engage with people we love. But then if that project comes to an end, we can then drift off and start working on other things. And so we effectively create this living organism where specialists now and experts can come together and dissipate to solve the problems that need to be solved without creating these heavy, rigid structures that are organizations and corporations. So it allows us now to tackle these problems. And so that's one aspect. Okay, is with these traditional rigid structures that have helped us scale, but also created constraints. And I felt that in my own personal career. Two, if we look at the problems that are in front of us right now, we look at the things that we have to solve as a society. You talked about, referred to like basic income, right? Universal basic income, healthcare, right? Which is in this country that we live in, the United Kingdom, is very reactive. It's not proactive. America had a reactive system, but it was quite expensive. You had to pay out of your pocket for this proactive system. So healthcare isn't where. Then we have energy crises. We have climate crisis. We had the rainiest winter in the UK, but it's been sunny for 5 weeks, and that makes me very nervous that it's been sunny straight in the UK for so long, because that means something else has gone wrong, right? That we're getting this kind of change in the weather, right? But these problems, energy problems, AI problems, they're all very multidisciplinary, right? If you look at what the United Nations have put out in front of us as a society for the Sustainable Development Goals, right? These are 18 incredibly impactful goals. They talk about poverty, they talk about energy, they talk about clean water. They talk about things that we take as fundamentals where we live, but in lots of places in the world, they don't exist. These are multidimensional problems. They take experts from lots of different areas. And so what I'm getting at is that even though AI makes us fragmented, even though AI creates us as a handful of solo entrepreneurs, it also enables us to come together in the right ways at the right time to solve the right problems. And we bring those expertise together to solve these multidisciplinary problems, because that's exactly what they are. They take all these inputs. Furthermore, as we think about it, think about just going back to how we built traditional software. There's a reason why there's a vast majority of men dominating the software development industry, right? There's certain skills that are involved in building software, running databases, running these large systems, that gravitated more towards men as a personality than women. And now that we have AI involved in these systems, the way we build solutions and systems isn't about putting rules together and stitching software and code together. We now start to use our words to describe the behavior of a system. These are through prompts and prompt engineering, and these words, these descriptions, these narratives that we tell about how a system behaves. These come from lots of different disciplines. We want left brain and right brain together. We want people that are technical. We want people that are philosophical. We want people that understand how our brains work. We want to understand how the machines work. And this is building these cohesive teams of multiple disciplines is how we're going to build the next generation of solutions and products.
So I think you touch a lot of very key things. So I want to still touch one more area, and I know that we passed close to 1 hour, but I still would like to go to 3-4 more questions. So coming back to the daily interaction with your clients, your partners, and especially the network events. So let's ask this question. How, in your interactions, and direct question, I know that I normally tend to make big questions, so I'll go very directly. How prepared do you think people are for what is going on?
There's a Venn diagram of circles of preparedness. And I think in some communities I'm involved with, um, people have been asking and talking and debating around the impacts of AI into their existing businesses for months, for if not years. We've been challenging each other. We've been debating it. We're trying to find ways to make new businesses. We're trying to find ways to use these tools to solve problems. And so, but I realize this is a very small circle. It's a very niche group of people. And so this Venn diagram of people that I'm working with in these small communities, they're very well prepared. We're having great conversations. We're doing vibe coding. We're building solutions on top of AI. We're bringing avatars in. We're making things automatic. We're generating music. We're making videos. We're doing all kinds of things. But I step outside that circle and I go into communities of, for example, like writers, right? And literally a call was on this morning where where people are saying, I'm an author, I'm a writer. I've made my living through traditional journalism for all these years, and I'm definitely afraid that this AI is going to come along and take my job away, right? It's going to write articles as good. And so you have this large segment of the population who hasn't figured out how AI is going to help them. They live in fear that it's going to supplant them and take their role, and they don't have a path forward. They need they don't see a path forward. Let's put it that way. And so I think there's a real opportunity for us to go into those larger communities. These are communities of artists, people that generate, that are painters, or people that form things with clay, or form things with wood, or create art. They said, listen, what's the point of me creating this art if I just go to an AI and it generates an image for you, and that's good. And I think we have to show them that, listen, you won't necessarily use AI to replace your craft, right? But you're going to use AI to help you with the things that you've never been. There's a reason that you became an artist, right? You weren't a marketer, you weren't a salesperson, you weren't a network builder, you weren't a communicator. And so you can now focus on the thing that gives you the most energy as a creator, as an individual, as a leader, and then the AI can help you fill in these other gaps that you used to have to hire someone to go work with you before. So the short answer to the question is, there are certain people that are now that are very focused and are very well prepared. They're figuring out exactly where things fit, but it's a very small niche. It's a very small niche, and we now have to go and show everyone else where it fits and where it doesn't fit, and how they can use it to help themselves without being fearful that's going to take away the value that they create.
So let's go. I think you touched two AI communities: the highly prepared people, the non-prepared people. And I think there's still a third one that probably didn't put, but I think because you're talking about your network. So we're talking about highly prepared technology people, ecosystem, and then as well, highly educated people, but not prepared at all. Then we have the people not prepared, because we still have 8.2 billion people around the world.
So these are people that are doing crafts and tradesmen and, plumbers and electricians and painters and all kinds of manual people making pizza, right? In a pizza oven.
So let's go to those ones, because let's go one thing, and I know that I cannot speak with this with a lot of people. I think you are fantastic to speak about this. So the challenge that we're facing right now, and as well, we are involved in a couple of groups like the businessabc.net, and as well the Business ABC Summit, AI Summit. So one of the things that I feel, and I'm talking with a very personal touch, is the confusion that exists in terms of digital divide. Even within my own ecosystem, within my team, most of the people don't know how to use digital. Of course, everyone knows how to use an email or to use a browser, but I talk digital to empower themselves. And then there's the AI divide, which we're talking about. So from this perspective, especially from the ones that are prepared. So let's look at the positive part. So the ones that are prepared, what are the things that you suggest that you see them doing to prepare themselves? Because I think that's what people are listening to us are looking at. And I know that is your expertise. because I think you are building a new career on preparing people for this based on your knowledge and a lot of different things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The first and foremost thing that I talk about for people that are most prepared is that I talk about this notion of AI literacy. And so what does AI literacy mean, right? For an individual, it's really about how do I start to create those behaviors, those intentions around using these tools on a regular basis, whatever your role may be, whether it's, whether you're in a sales role and you need to communicate with people, whether you're in communications and you want to send an email, even if you know how to write and send an email. I find it for myself because I have a technology background and I haven't spent as much time perfecting my ability to communicate in all different channels. Is I can use the AI very simply to translate, right, for me, or present something in a language that'll be easy to understand by different consumers of that information. So the first thing that I tell lots of people to do is just start using the tools on a regular basis. Start with ChatGPT. It may or may not be the best. We can argue about which models come in, which model to choose, but just start using it on a regular basis. Start figuring out ways that you can find a way to see what it does, that you can engage with it. And what's really interesting about this, especially in one of the communities that I participate in, if you spend enough time with this Chat GPT and you start thinking about, for example, how do I craft my brand out there in the public? How do I create a LinkedIn profile that will adopt and help me find the customers I'm looking for? What are the projects that I'm working on? What are the things that are at the top of mind for me? You can go into the AI and you can actually say, okay, given all the things we've talked about and all the things that I'm focused on, what are my blind spots? What am I missing? What I haven't seen? And it's shocking because you spend so much time with this AI, it really has a good picture of you as an individual, and it can give you some insights if you're willing to listen to it that are incredibly beneficial and eye-opening as a leader or as a provider. So first and foremost, it's going back to the question is start using the tools on a regular basis. Create an image, see what works for you. Create a conversation with it. Have a debate with it. Challenge it on a societal issue, or challenge it, or have it ask you or prepare you for a conversation. There's all kinds of things, and it comes back to you asking the right questions. At the end of the day, these AIs that we have right now today, they're mirrors, they're reflections of ourselves. And whatever we put into them is what we'll get back out of them.
So that is the key thing. And I think that's the why we can actually build this ecosystem. So coming back to what you're doing right now, and I'm particularly excited about the work you're doing and as well how you take it forward, because I think that this is, I think, the important thing that we can bring narratives that are more constructive and as well build new business economical models. And as well, I think we could not, I know that you are very social conscious personality, is that definitely this creates a huge, I would say, even for me, I'm talking very personal, it creates a kind of a schizophrenic approach, because in one end we have these amazing tools that you can do fantastic things like you describe. In one end we have business models being destroyed and being created in the space of weeks. And this is creating an entire instability. And I will just quote an article that I want to highlight from Inc. And the article, it's from an expert opinion by Joe Procopio, that is a founder as well and the writer. And I just want to highlight one thing, and this is the idea of we are all right now solopreneurs. And of course, as being a solo entrepreneur, I think the challenge is that most of the universities or even any schools or ever any kind of education prepare us for this. And of course, we have the solo entrepreneurs in Europe, which have a more sense of entitlement because you're Europeans or Americans. Then you have in Latin America, we have Africa, which most of the population in Africa is 18 years old. And of course, we have Asia, which it's a much more complex solo entrepreneur because we have a much more dysfunctional economies and so forth. But this is creating a kind of a chaos. And so my question for you is, can we avoid the idea of each person for themselves and create communities? And I know that you're very conscious ambassador, and I would say a dynamic personality. I said that glues, probably there's other better words, but you manage one of your superpowers that you can put people together and put them talking and put them creating the best of them. So I would like to talk that aspirational and that as well more constructive narrative, and especially from the groups that you are part and you're leading. How can we get this narrative right, and as well create these models? Because in the end of the day, if we put all these ecosystems together, we have billions of people, and all of them are struggling with the same challenges.
Right. I think one of the best ways for us as humans, as as creatures that live on this planet and inhabit this planet, one of the best ways for us to learn is to find ways to talk to each other. This helps us solve geopolitical problems, helps us solve crisis problems. But the reason why I bring this up is that the technology is moving so fast and it's exploding in so many different dimensions. It appears chaotic. If you're to open up Twitter or X, I guess it's called now. I still haven't got that logged into my head that to call Twitter X. But if you could on social media and you go on LinkedIn, it's very easy to get into a doom scroll where you're just seeing page after page and post after post after post of all these different aspects that are going on in this space. And you say, well, how does this help me? And so this is where community comes back into play. When I build a community, when I work with a community and I work in a community, I start to find people that are facing the same problems with me. I start to find people that I can then go ask and say, hey, I'm trying to solve this particular problem. Does anyone have a solution for that? Right? And now these communities that we've started to engage with and we started to build with, they raise their hand like, oh, you should try this, or you should try that. And so instead of you having to go off and do the research and say, like, wow, how do I solve this problem? We now can go and engage with our community and get real concrete answers to ways to use the technology to help us move forward. And so this helps create a bond amongst the people. It helps us to build a barrier so that or it helps us build not a barrier, but helps to build a common fabric that we can then use to collaborate together. For example, in one, there's this whole notion right now being discussed pretty heavily on social media and talking about it as we move from software engineering into AI prompted engineering. People have been calling it vibe coding. And there's positive experiences and negative experiences. Sometimes you can sit down with just a few words, and there's a few apps that are out there that'll generate an entire experience for you. Get these models to generate an entire like web page and a web page experience. But then you come back in and say, okay, actually change this to this, make this button green instead of blue, and it creates a whole nother experience for you. You say, wait a second, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want a whole new experience. I just wanted a fine change between what you created the first time and this the way I want to behave it here. And so getting these tools to behave can be frustrating. And so what these communities are now doing is they're saying, listen, here's a set of rules that I found, right, that allow me to not only create this incredible experience, right, that's very quickly, but I've also found a set of tools that help me to refine this experience over time so I get it to be exactly the way I wanted to get it. And so the what we're finding now is that these birds of a feather are starting to flock together, and they can help each other and they can come together for various solutions and then go back to their regular job. So now we're starting to create. There's a function. There's a group of people that may work together to deliver a product, deliver a service. Right. And so that's one set of people that you overlap with. Then there's another set of people that you're going to continue to talk to about how do I get advice? How do I solve this problem? There's another set of people that you can come to and say, well, how do I go out and generate new opportunities for my business? And so you start to find these communities of people that are out there that then can help you solve these problems together. And that's how we'll solve these divides and create these chaos. Is that we'll go through instead of having to go and try this on your own by yourself, you'll go into a trusted community. You'll find those people that you met and they'll share with you what they've learned, right? And the way this works is that we have to be bidirectional, right? We can't go into these communities and just consume, right? We have to give into these communities as well. We have to share what we've learned, right? And say, listen, here's a way that I've solved this particular problem. Here's a solution set that I have. Let me share this with you and see if it helps resonate. And it's built by sharing is how we get back.
So and I love that part, and I love your work on that. So from from all the work, especially Elysia.ai Labs is working, and the deployment of AI solutions, I would like to go right now on the technical part. So some of the things you've been doing is using AI agents, a lot of these tools to measure results, to streamline business operations, and very practical stuff that can actually accelerate businesses. And as well, you are a member of the AI Accelerate Institute. So tell us about that, and especially how important is the community building in this AI space, and how can we foster a more collaborative environment to put all this innovation, but as well create steps to empower these businesses.
Yeah, no, it's the right place for focus right now. And what we're finding, right, especially with the clients that we're working with, is that there are elements of business that have been perfectly functional for years, if not decades, but they're incredibly slow and incredibly cumbersome and incredibly brittle and fragile. And what we're doing is, particularly with our clients, is we're going into those particular areas that are costly and slow and expensive, and we're going in and surgically saying, let's go replace this with AI. Now, we're not going to go in and say, move out of the way, I'm going to take your job, right? We're going in and saying, we're going to build a solution that's going to dramatically accelerate what you're doing. So, and then finally, still as a human, you're still going to have the final say in what happens. So this allows us to then go into existing systems, existing workflows, and insert operational AI into a workflow to dramatically reduce the time. These are areas in compliance, for example, where they're lawyers who have to take weeks and weeks and weeks of time to review content to make sure that it's compliant with various regulations. And it doesn't mean that their jobs are going away. What it means is that there are only a few lawyers, and there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pieces of content that need to be reviewed to ensure compliance. So what we can use AI for is we can use AI to go in, do this initial assessment, get a set of reviews, get a set of opinions that then can be presented to the individual and say, these things pass, these things are actually compliant. There's one area or two areas that aren't compliant, take a look at it. And so taking this from having to read a whole document and form an opinion down to, I only have to make one or two decisions, this is a dramatic time saver and dramatic cost savings for these large businesses. So that's one example. There's other examples that where we're working with some startups that are really trying to create new ways of solving problems. And these are going back to some of the, you take a look at, what Uber did, right, with finding taxis and finding the friction points. You take a look at the health markets and the wellness markets. How do we provide personalized benefits, hyper-personalized wellness advice to individuals to help them with exercise or help them with travel or help them achieve their journeys? Those are all things that we're working on. So.
And then this is for me the most important thing. So my last two questions, and I want to be respectful of your time. So with intelligence systems and 24/7 agents becoming prevalent, how do you see this AI transforming the future of workplace? And specifically, can you share an example of some work you did with some business that you want to share that can create some kind of beacon of hope, but as well some kind of practical element how to take this forward?
The beautiful thing about these AI systems, and they're getting smarter and smarter over time, and I think we're really kind of hitting that paradigm shift where I sit down with an AI and I have to ask it a question, and once I ask it a question, it gives me I prompt it and it gives me a response back. That's kind of where we are with the current AI systems. What we're gonna see move over time is these AI systems are going to become more proactive themselves. They'll be able to predict things for us. They'll be able to help us. They'll be able to identify, hey, you've got a clash in your calendar. You don't make these commitments because you're not going to be able to get them done, right? So how do we help us be more successful with what we take on, what we commit to, and what we promise to do? That's where these things will be working behind the scenes and looking at all these inputs for us and helping measure and controlling where we're going. So back to your question though, is the one area I think the biggest one that where we saw the biggest impact that was measurable was going back to this example around Scopus AI. Now, this is a product, again, that we launched in August of 2023, so it's going on 2 years. But this is a product that's been around, probably been around 15, 20 years, was first incepted in the early 2000s. It had a very specific purpose, right? The purpose for Scopus AI was to help academics and help professors and help those that work in the academic institutes and academic professions to help them move their career forward. And so it was very rules-based. It was very rigorous. In fact, the connections that are linking the different pieces of content, the references to each other, all that, right? The references and the citations, all that was an inspiration for the World Wide Web and the linking of content that we have today. That's sort of just de facto in the way the web works. But because that data set was so pristine and so well trusted, there was an incredible there was a lot of concern around even doing things like putting natural language search. People said, "Hey, we should have natural language search on top of this product." Like, okay, great. Well, how does that help us create these connections, right? Let alone put AI on top of it. And so when we put AI on top of Scopus, one of the things that we found is we found a number of really insightful things. First and foremost, it turned out that when we went to the market with this product, we thought that this was going to be great for people that didn't know how to ask questions of the AI or early learners, right? They're early career people, and they wanted to sort of get a basic premise for a particular domain or a particular topic. But it turned out that even late career researchers, people that have been doing research in this space for a long time, when they started to look at these complex problems like sustainable development goals that we spoke about earlier, or multidisciplinary problems, they didn't even know how to approach their colleagues to ask basic questions about how does chemistry work or how does biology work if you're a physicist, for example. And so being able to put an AI on top of these systems now enabled us to ask and cross-disciplinary questions across the different content to bring it together to help get basic answers for even people that were advanced in their career. So that was one example of how it drove, there were certain assumptions about how this data set lived underneath, certain assumptions about how people wanted to interact with it through the librarian or through the knowledge worker that was the main accessor of that information, to the value that it created. And in fact, it turned the business around, that it saw a double-digit growth because people were excited about the ways that they could interact with the content in new ways. So that's one example. I think the other examples that we're also starting to see is we're taking a lot of pressure out of systems that have been poorly behaving over time. We think about customer support, and we think about how that one time where you call a customer support line, or you get send an email into customer with a problem, and you connect with that one particular agent who has the answers and has the experience. You think, God, that was an incredible experience. But 9 times out of 10, you find someone that doesn't have the answers at their fingertips. It takes too long, and so AI is an incredible tool for pulling that information and driving the quality of the overall response higher than even humans can do. One client that we were working with was comparing their various flows between having a completely human-driven support process or a completely AI-driven support process. And their AI support process was outperforming their human-driven one because it had all that information and it could reliably get the answer, solve the problem with a higher degree of accuracy than the humans that could in the loop. And so these are hard problems. They're hard to train humans to get all the context of the different ways that you can solve a problem. And so this is another example of what we're seeing in the short term.
Last one, and I think more about you. So you are someone that has a fantastic background, and of course we put all the different links. So the question is, what steps, and we touched this partly, but I would like to do it from an ethical and responsibility part. So because of course, a lot of these AI models are hallucinogenic still. They can manipulate you, and they can manipulate your health, and depends of how eager and a lot of people right now, actually, there was a study recently that mentioned that OpenAI in particular was being used a lot for personal counseling and relationships and emotional intelligence and emotional I would say, emotional bearing between people. So, how do you see the ethical and responsibility, privacy, data security, and especially how people can engage with you to look at this? Because I know that you're dealing with a lot of work and research around these things and your groups.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. I think that we have to understand how we have to, first and foremost, it's important to understand. This is where I come back to the AI literacy and about the data. So first and foremost, we have to understand what these AI systems can and can't do. Um, it's there's a lot of concern about risk. But if we think about it and we boil it down, that there's email as a system is probably riskier in terms of leaking out our intellectual property or sending out misinformation out into the world than these AI systems are. It's so easy for me to cut and paste a document, send it out to people, and suddenly it's out there and exposed in the world. And the reality is the data that I give to an AI, even though it seems to know me, it's really that application. Like so ChatGPT as an application, that's where the memories are stored, right? That data about me, about Erik and what I do and the systems I work on actually isn't really going back into the model because it takes a long time for them to retrain these models. The models underneath are static. What they've done is they've created a nice veneer on top that feels very personalized. And so understanding what that separation of data is and how it actually is working is incredibly important. So that's one aspect of it. Um, the data themselves, it's biased, right? It's been trained on a highly westernized data set, so it's going to give answers that are more appropriate or we'll see more correct or more factually provable for a Western society. These models we need to bring in more data into these systems. That we need to bring in data from different cultures. We need to bring in data from different societies and different pastimes to get a more balanced and view. And so it's really important to understand where that data comes from. And what goes into those systems before you build your systems on, or understand the bias that it's going to lean to one way or the other. Third, just talking back about that scoped system and about how we build trusted systems, there are absolute techniques that you can use today to ensure that the AI system gives back truth and fact based only on the data that you give it. Okay, so there are mechanisms to do that. There are ways to put guardrails around it. There are ways to put constraints around it. Fourth, cost. It's one of the things you want to be very careful of is that you don't want to release your AI models necessarily directly to customers unless you understand exactly how they're going to engage with it. Because if that becomes out there and gets viral, the cost can explode dramatically. And so, a lot of ways that people are integrating with AI is that they're using AI internally to batch process their information, and they're using very cheap systems or even non-AI systems as a customer interface. So you create that barrier so you don't have all your customers hitting the AI directly, which can be an incredible cost. So anyway, there's multiple dimensions, and I think the way we engage with a customer is we understand what their data looks like. We understand what the business problem is. We understand what their constraints are. We understand what they're trying to solve, and we put together an entire plan that helps them figure out where the AI fits, what data they can put into it, how their data is organized. Do they have the right hygiene on their data? Do they have the right cleanliness on the data? And then put a system together that's going to scale long term. And this is where I build on my years of experience working with large corporates and building large systems, is that we know exactly how to layer these things together to build a highly performant solution that works at scale and doesn't put you at risk. So,
Well, fantastic advice. It's been a blast and a lot of, I would say, a lot of learning for everyone listening to us because I'm learning every day and I'm very humble when it comes to this because it definitely, like you said, AI literacy is the most important thing for our generation. And we are in the beginning. We didn't spoke about AGI. We didn't spoke about a lot of the biggest, much bigger risks that are coming. But I think for people listening to this, I think we touched a lot of great things. Thank you so much, Erik. It's been inspirational, and I know that you are a fantastic force of nature, but capable of looking at the technical layers, the thought leader layers, and the personal layers, which I think everything works together. So I don't know. You are very present on social media, especially on LinkedIn. Any notes that you want to leave to the audience where they can follow, engage with you and your groups?
Yeah, no, thank you, Dennis, and thanks for having me on the show. It's great to talk to you about all these aspects. One of the reasons that I love to engage with yourself and love to engage with clients is that we all are learning on a regular basis, and it's trying to solve these problems together is how we all learn and put things together. But for me, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm present. I also have a bit of following on X as well, but LinkedIn is the best place. Look forward to connecting with you. Looking forward to, if you're in London, having you out to join some of our networks. Come see us in person. I think we're really pushing post-COVID to re-engage in interpersonal relationships. Helping us become more human again is the benefit of AI.
Amen. Thank you so much, Eric. It's been an honor, and I think this will be the first of a lot. Thank you.
I can't wait to talk to you about some of these more meaty topics around AGI and super intelligence and where we're going to go in 6 months to a year from now. We'll have to keep a regular cadence going so we can watch the progress.